evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of A Closer Look, the show dedicated to bringing you the facts. We ask the questions no one else will, and we get the answers that no one else can. Welcome to part 2 of ACL Presents Conversations with NIB. We're here at the beautiful Atlantis Resort on Paradise Island. Joining me again for this very important conversation are NIB Acting Director Heather Maynard, Dr. Tammy Francis, who is the Deputy Director of Operations and Actuarial Services, and Trevor Bryce, who is the Senior Manager of Compliance. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for round 2.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Give our viewing audience a sort of refresher. We've been talking all things NIB. We've been talking all things related to the rate increase and what Bahamians can expect in the coming months and what they can expect after July 1st. But first, before we get into all of that, tell the Bahamian public who you are, your roles at NIB, and why you are designated to really be the persons to give us the answers that everyone seems to be looking for.
Good evening again. My name is Heather Maynard. I'm the Acting Director and the Chief Executive Officer at the National Insurance Board. I am in charge of all administrative functions at the board, and certain departments are under my remit, like the legal department, public relations department, contributions department, and information technology department. I've been at the board for 34 years, so I've seen all of the changes that occur through the different years and different governments.
Mm-hmm. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Tammy Francis, and I would have been at the National Insurance Board for 20 plus years. But I have a twofold role at the National Insurance Board. I'm responsible for actuarial services, so I get to look at a whole lot of the actuarial review and a lot of the recommendations being made. And I also have my second cap is the Deputy Director of the Operations Department, and that entails different departments such as our claims, customer service, registration, call center, and the sub offices. So it encompasses a whole lot.
Yeah, Ms. Bryce.
Good evening. My name is Trevor Bryce. I'm the Senior Manager for the Compliance Department. And in my role, I'm responsible for the day-to-day operations of the Compliance Department. In that department, I'm responsible for supervising and directing the managers of that department, who also has responsibility for the compliance officers in that area. And it's a very active area. We are charged with the responsibility of ensuring that the revenue, the compliance revenue comes in. And so it's very active. And it's an enjoyable role as well. Been with the board now for some 18 years.
Well, it's such a pleasure to have all of you back for round 2 of our Q&A. We've been hearing from the general public about their concerns, their questions, and we are ready to dive back in and answer those. But that happens on the other side of the break, so stay tuned because A Closer Look Presents is back in just a moment.
Un, deux, trois. Depuis que je t'ai vu, je ne pense que ma pieuvre m'a-t-elle oublié. Après toutes ces heures, elle m'attendra là où nous nous sommes. Rien n'a changé. Elle m'attendra, elle m'attendra, elle m'attendra. Mais comment lui faire savoir? Comment la convaincre? Je vais la revoir sans devenir dingue. T'as peut-être changé, la fenêtre sera fermée. Reviendras-tu, mais comme va jamais?
Welcome back. During our last episode, we spent time covering questions on the why and the how. Our panel has also fielded questions on NIB's investment strategy and more. Tonight, we continue those conversations, starting with this question from Marco Burrows. Let's take a look.
Well, my question for NIB would be, is it mandatory that Bahamians pay NIB contributions? And if so, why? Is there a system that we can explore and other options so that if I pay NIB, I can pick and choose the benefits that I would get back from NIB?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think this sounds very much like a compliance question. Mr. Bryce, would you care to jump in?
Yes, certainly. So the answer to the question is yes. It is mandated that everyone pays national insurance contributions. The National Insurance Act actually requires that everyone who attains the mandatory school leaving age and is gainfully employed in the Bahamas is required to pay contributions based on the wages that they would have earned. And so it isn't. So there is no option, and also it does not make a difference whether the person is working part-time or full-time. They are still required to pay those contributions into the board.
Mm-hmm. And to his point about wanting to be able to opt into certain benefits, is that something that NIB has ever considered? Is that something that's on the table at all?
Well, we don't have that luxury. Workers do not have that luxury, in that we are mandated by the ILO Convention 102. And it is responsible for the framework that sets the minimum standards that governs what we do at National Insurance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Director, you have anything to add to that?
Well, adding from what Mr. Bryce said, the National Insurance Act, actually Chapter 350, Statute of Law of the Bahamas, it mandates that all employed persons pay national insurance contribution. That also includes self-employed persons. Mm-hmm. And if you fail to pay your contributions, that is an offense under our Act.
Wow.
In fact, it's an offense if you fail to register your business if you're an employer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I think that is a very important question, one that Bahamians are obviously thinking about. But I think you guys have also given a really comprehensive answer to that as well. Our next question comes again from local radio personality, C.A. Nuri. And his contributions, or his question rather, has more to do with what happens to the NIB internal structure. So let's take a look at his question.
What I would like to know is, from an administrative point of view, if NIB decides to streamline its workforce, right? It lower the amount of employees they have. Will the rate still have to increase? That's basically what I want to know.
Well, that's a fair question. I think a lot of Bahamians are wondering, how much is being spent on administrative costs, and does that impact the decision to go forward with a rate? So, Director, you want to?
Well, the administrative costs do not impact the decision on increasing the contribution rate. Administrative costs are 20% below the overall costs to operate the fund. And so curtailing administrative costs would not make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Francis, you care to jump in, because you speak from the operations side, so you are aware of what it takes to run NIB, effectively. Is that really something that Bahamians should be generally concerned about?
Well, of course, it is the if we look at it, the public's purse. In other terms, let's just say that for every dollar that's contributed to NIB, 20 cents of that dollar, is utilized towards operating NIB. And just think about it. We would have had COVID-19, we would have had Hurricane Dorian. If NIB's staff was not there to make sure that these benefits were paid, we would have had many persons who pretty much would have been, just out there.
Yeah. Well, that's a very good point. I think you guys have covered that particular question in a pretty extensive way. And I hope that the Bahamian people are listening and fully comprehend what that really means. Ladies and gentlemen, stay with us. There's more of our in-depth Q&A with our NIB team right after this.
So a few years ago, I found out that I had a pre-existing condition. It was eventually got debilitating over time to a point where I could not work. So I did have to take the time off to do the surgery so that I could be able to get back to work and get back to my regular daily habits. There is a relief to know that at the end of the day, I'm not alone. I still have something that I can fall back on at the end of the day to still take care of me. So it is that comfort.
Welcome back. You're watching A Closer Look Presents Conversations with NIB. Tonight, we're fielding questions from average everyday Bahamians on the changes that are set to take place as of July 1st. Our next question comes from Kaylee Sands, a recent college graduate who's home now to begin her career. Let's take a look.
I would like to know, how does NIB's social security system compare to the other countries within our region, specifically regarding our contribution rates, as well as the benefits that we're being offered? And then also I wanted to know, are we paying more but receiving fewer benefits than these countries within our region?
It's a very good question from a young person.
Yes. So right now, within the region, the average contribution rate is 11.3%.
Okay.
NIB stands at 9.8%. So you can see that we are already below the regional average. What's very interesting is that we offer the fourth lowest contribution rate. However, we offer 8 out of the 9 benefits that are mandated by the ILO Convention 102. Yeah. I think what is also interesting about NIB is we are only one of 3 of our regional counterparts that offer the unemployment benefit. So I think NIB in itself is very, very relevant to our workers, and I think NIB right now is doing a lot of what the workers would be looking for once we increase the contribution rate.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that we offer 8 of the 9 ILO stipulated convention. So what is the outstanding one?
Well, that's the family benefit, family allowance, and throughout the region, there would be no other social security system within our region that offers that. That's something that's more relevant or more seen within the European countries and Canada.
Well, Dr. Francis, I think based on what you've explained, it's safe to say that the Bahamas is well ahead of some of our regional counterparts. But I think, all Bahamians would agree that there is still some ways to go. We have our next question coming in from Adam Trico. Let's take a look at what he had to say.
If we're not going to have enough persons coming behind us to deal with my generation and generation before me when we're all retired at the same time, would it not be a prudent change to try to switch NIB's model from pay-as-you-go to more of an actual saving fund so that your money that is set aside for you will be there when you retire, and maybe some extra can be given to float the currently retired people till the end of their time?
Well, that is an interesting question. Is it sensible for us to maybe look at this from a more savings specific standpoint where each individual is contributing to their own pension and retirement process?
Well, let's look at it this way. The question introduced about what is called a pay-as-you-go model. In actuality, that's what we are trying to steer away from. Okay. We're not being funded as a pay-as-you-go, not as yet. This is why we want to encourage the recommendations from the review of increasing the contribution rate. However, right now we are what is called partially funded. And it's interesting that he spoke about a savings fund, but we can look at the payments as a savings pool, because the more you pay into it as a worker, the more you will get out of it in terms of your short-term payments as well as your pension amounts, your pension payments. Now we have within this savings pool, we also have where I've heard a lot of persons talk about the NIB as more so a tax. Let's not look at it as a tax. Think about it. We can look at it as for your pension payments as an annuity. At the end of the day, you put in, you pay in, you retire, and you receive monthly payments, equal monthly payments at the end of the day. So NIB, in its relevance, I would say is more so a savings pool a savings pool fund, and we are structured along the lines of solidarity. In that, we have the rich pays for the poor, the well pays for the sick, the employed pays for the unemployed. And the able pays for the disabled. So we are here, NIB is here to provide that funding to not only workers. NIB is also here, we provide an assistance payment to some individuals who may not have had sufficient contributions or who may not have contributed at all. So NIB's relevance.
So we're looking at it as we're all taking care of each other. Right?
Yes.
Director?
Yes.
Anything to add?
I agree with Dr. Francis. We have assistances payments. So there are some who never contributed to the National Insurance Program and who come to the National Insurance Board looking for a retirement benefit. Yeah. So we have an assistance payment called All Age Non-Contributory Pension. And we do resource tests to determine whether or not they're eligible to receive this assistance payment. So people come from all walks of life, even the persons who did not contribute to the fund.
And they have still been able to get assistance.
Yes.
I think that's a very important point. And when we return, we will continue to answer all of the important questions that have come in. I appreciate you guys so much being here and answering these questions. ACL Presents Conversations with NIB continues right after this short break.
Hear what Boss Man was saying in the back there just now? About what? The luncheon? Why you always worried about food? No, about how we gotta pay a little more for national insurance. Mildred, you talking fool. I can't afford to pay that. And you're always crying, palm out. Ain't gonna be much. Boss still gotta pay. 1st of July, 2024.
I think that terminal benefit is what did help my boy Tony through the pandemic. That same unemployment benefit.
And guess what?
What? Susan, I think she'd get a pregnancy benefit, eh?
You mean maternity benefit, eh? So now, we gotta do our part to make sure we get our pension. All right, then let me try and go back to like easy boss.
Welcome back. For many Bahamians, navigating the impending rate increase at NIB can seem daunting. But we are here to help get you your answers. You're watching A Closer Look Presents Conversations with NIB, coming to you from the beautiful Atlantis Resort on Paradise Island. And I'm joined by key stakeholders from NIB who have been answering your very important questions. Our next question comes from Mr. Javon Williams. Let's take a look.
So here's my question. How can I ensure that my employer is actually paying my NIB contributions?
It's a good question. I'm going to throw this to the compliance man in the room. How do Bahamians ensure that all of their contributions are being paid and being received by the National Insurance Board?
That is a good question. What we do is, what we want to encourage all persons to do, all employees, is to come into the National Insurance Board and request a contribution history, a KYC statement that gives a full history of all of your contributions that would have come in for you. And if in reviewing that KYC, you find out that there are some employers who didn't make contributions for you, even though they may have been deducting it, we invite you then to submit an inquiry to the compliance department so that we can go about and investigate it. And that's helpful because it also provides us with an opportunity to address it at the earliest stages. And also we encourage employees to register on our registrant self-service portal. In that way, they don't even have to come into NIB, they just can go onto the portal and review their contribution history so that they will know whether the company they've been working for, all the companies they've been working for actually, have been making their contribution, submitting contribution payments for them.
And walk us through, what is that process? If I came in and I said, okay, I'm here to check my KYC, and I realized that, maybe my employers for the past 5 years have not been paying my contributions, even though it was deducted. What is then my recourse?
Okay, so once the employee comes in and they've determined that there is some missing contributions, what we ask them to do is fill out a statement, which is an employee inquiry statement indicating I would have worked for XYZ company. This is the period I worked for them. This is my salary. Once we have that information, then we have the inspector who is assigned for that specific company that employee will work for to conduct an investigation so that they will then go and pursue those payments to have those updated.
And have there been many cases where persons were able to get their back contributions paid?
Yes, that happens on a daily basis. And so, yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll keep it going with another question. This one from retired banker Kaynell Gould. We'll take a look at her question for the NIB board.
With the upcoming increase in contribution rates, will this automatically mean that benefits will be higher in the near future?
It is a good question. Does a higher contribution rate mean higher benefits?
That's a tricky question.
Okay.
In that we will be increasing the contribution rate, but we also have adjustments to what is called our wage ceiling. Currently, the wage ceiling sits at $740 per week. We would have initially increased our wage ceiling back in 2012. We have and mandated to have subsequent increases every 2 years to our wage ceiling. But with regards to the contribution rate increase, we would have individuals paying at a higher contribution rate. And I said it was a bit tricky because it will eventually cause some individuals in the long run, not right now, but in the long run, to receive higher benefits because they are paying on a higher amount. So eventually, as we conduct our calculations, their pensions and their short-term benefits will come out a little bit higher.
Okay, so in the long term is when people can expect to see these sort of additional increases in benefits. Okay. I guess our final question for the episode comes from senior business reporter Chester Robards again, and I think it's a very important question. Let's hear from Mr. Robards.
Yeah, so one of the general concerns, and probably one that a lot of people have, is if this increase on the Bahamian people has been because of the mismanagement of the fund over the years.
Well, that is a question that has been on the minds of many Bahamians. Director, do you care to give us an answer?
The funds are not being mismanaged by the National Insurance Board. By law, we are mandated to invest our funds in a certain fashion, and our investments department does a good job investing those funds. In fact, they did such a good job that when we had the crisis of Dorian and the pandemic, those funds were used to assist countless Bahamians.
Dr. Francis?
I think the general misconception is that at NIB we utilize the contributions paid into NIB for everything else than what we are supposed to use it for. And as the director would have indicated, NIB was there when it mattered. NIB was there when individuals needed those funds, and NIB made sure that the economy continued to move in cycle when individuals would have wondered where they would have gotten that dollar from. So NIB in itself is very, very relevant to the Bahamas.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a very insightful conversation indeed, and I'd like to give each of you the opportunity to, say a few closing words. Director, I'm going to start with you because you have been one of the people, that has really been advocating for Bahamians to get on board with this sort of we're here for each other kind of mentality. I pay for someone who's coming behind me, just like the people before me paid so that I could benefit. So if there was one thing that you wanted to get across to the Bahamian people, what would that be?
I would encourage all Bahamians to look at this contribution rate increase as positive. This is going to impact my generation and future generations.
Absolutely.
The National Insurance Board is absolutely important to the Bahamas, and we have to continue to sustain the National Insurance Board.
Dr. Francis?
Well, I would say, and I would go out there and I would say that NIB is one of the best governmental initiatives that would have been put forth for this country. I would encourage persons to embrace the upcoming contribution rate increase. Of course, we cannot save the world, but we want to save the fund. As of 2028, we want to ensure that NIB is still here. We want to ensure that those rates are still affordable. So like I said earlier, embrace the fund and embrace all that NIB has to offer to you.
Mr. Bryce, you have the final say to this.
Yes. And so I would want to encourage all persons, residents and Bahamians, to embrace the new rate increase. So see it as an investment in your future. Because if you invest today, it means that something will be there for you for tomorrow. And so I simply encourage them to get more information on it as well, but see it as a future investment.
Thank you so much, guys, for being here. Obviously,
Thank you
this
so much for having us.
This has been such an insightful conversation. I think our viewing public has a clearer idea of what is actually planned and why. So thank you so much.
And if they have any questions, they can also go on our website,
Absolutely.
NIBRateIncrease.com.
Absolutely. The NIB Rate Increase website is available to the general public. It's www.nibrateincrease.com. But stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. We are back with our wrap-up of this very special edition of A Closer Look, live from the Atlantis Resort in just a moment.
During 2020, in the COVID era, more things had transitioned to online, emailing, submitting the forms virtually, and I found that very convenient personally because I like to do everything online. I will buy groceries, I will buy water online if I can. And so I found that in that manner, a little more efficient for me personally because I like to do things online.
Did you hear the answer to your pressing NIB questions? I hope that you're leaving us tonight with a greater sense of clarity and a comprehensive overview of the way forward, empowering you to make more informed decisions for your future. But even if you didn't get the specific answer to your specific question, fear not, because the information is at your fingertips. It's as easy as logging on to NIBRateIncrease.com. Visit the website, arm yourself with information, and learn how you can become a more active participant in your Social Security journey. NIB is here for all of us. Whether you need it now or not, our forefathers intended it to be a safety net for all working Bahamians. But it's up to us to protect it and each other now and well into the future. Till next time, everyone, I'm Arabina Apia. Good night.